Welcome to Bio Unit 3, Lecture Number 2. We're going to be talking about properties of water today. Just a couple of reminders before we jump in that the chemistry review assignment from last time, that's going to be due today, so make sure you get that in. We are going to start a new assignment later today, and that's going to be something called the Properties of Water POGL. I believe this is going to be our first POGL activity of the year, and POGL is basically an organization that makes a series of worksheets, and the worksheets are really great that help solidify the points of what we want to learn about in class. So there will be an assignment later today. You will have class time to work on it, and that's going to be the Waters of Property POGL. And just a quick thing to note for next week, there will be a quiz next week. So take a look at the study guide that's going to come out soon. A quiz next week on the first part of Unit 3. So when you leave today, these are the things that I would like for you to be able to do. The first thing is I would like you to be able to explain what makes a molecule polar, specifically water, when we're going to look at it later. But I would also like for you to explain how the properties of water that result from its polarity and hydrogen bonding affect biological function. So this idea that we've been talking about, this polar molecule where it has a plus charge on one side and a minus charge on another side, that's really important for water because it's going to tie into a lot of its properties. And without these properties, we wouldn't really have life as we know it. So we're going to kind of talk about each one of those things. So let's just jump right into it. We want to identify that water is indeed a polar molecule. Water molecules have a slight positive charge on one end and a slight negative charge on the other end. More specifically, a slight positive charge on the hydrogen side and a slight negative on the oxygen side. And those positives and negatives, they are going to be able to attract to other positives and negatives. A positive will attract to a negative of a different water molecule, and this negative will attract to a positive of a different water molecule. So that's going to be really important when we talk about polar molecules. Water molecules, because they have these positives and negative regions, they are attracted to other water molecules because of the polarity, and they form these things called hydrogen bonds. So if you remember, hydrogens are slightly positive, oxygens are slightly negative. So this oxygen, because it's negative, wants to attract to other positive things. So these positive and negative charges, they want to balance out, and they will try to do that by forming these things called hydrogen bonds. So this water molecule on the far left can form a hydrogen bond with this water molecule, and that can form hydrogen bonds with this water molecule and this water molecule. So basically all these waters, these molecules can form bonds with each other because of their positive and negative charges. Now, these hydrogen bonds are not the same thing like covalent bonds. The covalent bonds in this diagram are represented by the gray bars that you see here between the hydrogens and the oxygens. The hydrogen bonds are just these dotted lines here. Hydrogen bonds are very weak in comparison. They're not really that strong of bonds. They're actually very easily broken. So we want to remember that the hydrogen bonds are easily broken, but they are there. They help hold the water together, basically. And because water likes to be attracted to one another, it likes to, it's basically got this property called cohesion. So water is cohesive. Water molecules are attracted to or like to stick to other water molecules. And this explains water's very spherical drop shape. So when you've probably seen like on a window, if you've been a passenger in a car and it's been raining outside, that water molecules, when they join together, they will kind of quickly join into one larger water droplet. And that water droplet is going to be kind of circular or spherical in shape. And that is the property of cohesion, where water will be attracted to itself. So that prefix co in cohesion or cohesive, co means together or mutual, in common. So water molecules will stick to other water molecules. And because water can stick to other water molecules, it has another property called surface tension. So over here, you can see like if you have a body of water, the top layer of water molecules are extra cohesive and create almost like this skin-like surface. And so some organisms can take advantage of that. Like you have these bugs here that can actually balance their entire body weight on top of the water without actually breaking the surface tension of the water. So water has surface tension, and that is because of its cohesive properties. Okay. Water can also be adhesive. So it's kind of the same thing with the stickiness of cohesion, but now it's called adhesion. So think of adhesion, think adhesive like a glue stick. That's when you want to adhere two things together. Water can also stick to other molecules. Water climbs against gravity to bring water to a plant due to its adhesion to the stem. Another more practical example that I can give you is you can put water on a surface like a table, and then you can take a piece of paper towel or a napkin, and you just dip the corner of the napkin into the water, and the water will actually climb up. It'll almost be like the sucked up the napkin, but that's because of its property of adhesion. So it's actually kind of adhesive, and it will stick to it. Another example is if we've ever gone swimming in a pool or a lake and we come out of the water and water is stuck to our skin and we have to wipe it off with a towel. So it doesn't just fall off of us instantly. It actually does stick to surfaces, and that's why we need to wipe those surfaces off. So water does have that adhesive property. All right, if you need a little brain break, we just started talking about the water properties and we have a few more to talk about. But if you need a brain break, you can take no more than 3 minutes. But otherwise, we're going to keep going here. So because water has cohesive and adhesive properties, it also has this thing called capillary action that it can do. So capillary action is when water can rise up a tube against gravity and no energy is required here. We don't need to put in any energy. Water can just climb up a straw. Water climbs a tube because of adhesion to the walls, and this is how plants can actually uptake water through their roots. So from the root system of the plants all the way to the top of the leaves, there's like a series of these tubes called xylem that allow for water to flow through and climb up to the leaves. Now, I do want to mention that the smaller the radius of this tube, the more likely it is for water to climb up. So the skinnier the tube, the higher the water will climb up. So you can imagine in a plant that's getting taller and taller, those tubes are getting really, really skinny to let, basically, they're like as wide as one water molecule, or they can let one water molecule pass up the tube. And this is because of the property of adhesion. Now, you might have heard the term capillary before. We also have this kind of effect in animals where the blood vessels get smaller and smaller and skinnier until eventually they turn into something called capillaries. And the same type of principle is happening there, but that's with mostly blood. But blood, of course, is like mostly made up of water anyways. So the same principle kind of applies there. All right, one more property of water that we want to cover is that water becomes less dense when it freezes. You can see that if you were to get a cup of water and put ice in it, the ice is always going to float to the top, and that's because the ice is less dense than the water. So water becomes less dense when it freezes, and this causes the ice to float on the water, and this supports the survival of aquatic life during the winter time. So 2 reasons why that happens. Over here in the bottom left, we have a drawing of like these 2 fish. They're smiling. And then we have this layer of ice on top. So in the wintertime, when all of the lakes freeze, we have this layer of ice on top that's doing 2 purposes, basically. The first one is it's insulating or protecting the lake from the harsh weather on outside. So the temperatures on the outside can be really, really, really cold, like way below 0. But the lake temperature, even though it's still going to be cold, is going to be significantly warmer than the air temperature up here. And that's because this ice layer is kind of protecting it. The other reason why this is important is because if ice were to sink, what would happen is that once the surface layer froze because the air temperature is so cold, that ice would sink. And then over time, those layers of ice would just go up, 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 and they would kind of sink from the bottom and move their way to the top. And eventually that would just push all the fish out of the lake, and the fish would die. So, this whole principle that water is less dense than ice is less dense than water is really important in the survival of fish and any aquatic life in bodies of water. All right, another thing that we want to mention is water having something called a high specific heat capacity. And it takes a lot of heat to make water hot. So it takes a lot of energy in order to do this. And this helps regulate temperature ranges worldwide. So if you have a pot of water that is filled, pretty generously with water, let's say at least halfway, maybe even 3/4 with water, and you try to heat it up to boil it, it's going to take quite a bit of time. And the more water you have, the longer it's going to take for the boil to come in this pot. And so that's really important to understand because that can actually be attributed, or it can be kind of projected to different climates as well. So we have areas like California and Arizona, which are on the same latitude. They're fairly close to one another geographically. But California is surrounded by water. It's got a lot more humidity, whereas Arizona, it's got a mountain range that's going to block the water from reaching it. It's a very dry place. And so they have less water and they have more extreme temperatures, less life here, more deserts. Whereas California, they're going to have a lot more moderate temperatures. They're going to have a lot more life supported there just because of the water's ability to take all that heat away. Another note that I could possibly make here, if you try to do this experiment, maybe if you did it outside, it's a little bit safer, but you can take like a candle with a flame, and if you were to take a balloon filled with air and put it over the flame, what's going to happen? Well, obviously the balloon's going to pop, right? And so the balloon, that will pop, all the air will come out, and there's nothing really insulating the plastic of the balloon or the rubber of the balloon from popping. But if you took a water balloon and like you took that same balloon, you filled it with water and try to put it over a candle with the flame, it's not going to pop immediately like the other balloon did. What would actually happen is that the water would stabilize the temperature of the rubber of the balloon, and then it wouldn't pop immediately. It might take a couple of seconds, but eventually it would pop, but it certainly wouldn't pop right away like a normal balloon. Another cool thing that we witness with water, and that's really important, is that we can actually experience water in all three states of matter. If you think about it, we don't really do that with a lot of other things that we interact with, any other chemical. Like if you think of oxygen that we breathe, oxygen is a gas, right? We don't really see it as a liquid or a solid. And then other solids that we see, like metals and things like that, we don't ever see a solid as a gas, or very rarely will we see solids as a liquid, right? And so water is one of those things that we can interact with in all three states of matter, and that's actually kind of important to for its relation to biology. We use water vapor. We study water vapor in terms of like humidity and things like that, and that's really important into life. Water as a liquid, of course, is really important, not only for aquatic life, but for drinking. But then also as a solid, like ice on the surface of a pond, that's going to be really important as well. We know the boiling and freezing temperatures of water in Celsius are really easy to remember. In Celsius, water boils at 100 degrees and it freezes at 0. So the Celsius scale is basically built off of water. It goes from 0 to 100, going from freezing to boiling. Now in Fahrenheit, which we're more used to, water will boil at 212 degrees Fahrenheit and 32 degrees for freezing. The last point I want to make here is that water is a universal solvent. What does that mean to be a solvent? It means that water is really good at dissolving a lot of other substances. Its charged molecules attract other molecules and can then dissolve them. Things that dissolve really easily in water, we've got sugar and we also have salt. So over here in this example, we have someone making lemonade in the sink. So you have a pitcher filled with water, and they're just adding sugar. And if you stir it, eventually those things will dissolve. So that's really important to understand, especially when we talk about like hypertonic and hypotonic solutions. That's because water is that solvent that diluted all those solutes. So that basically concludes all the notes that we have on the properties of water. What I'd like for you to do now is take a look at this POGIL activity, and this is a PDF in Canvas. Just take a look at it. It's going to be a little lengthy, but it's really good at helping to drive the points of everything that we talked about today. And you're going to go ahead and turn this into Canvas, and it's due at the beginning of next class period.